So let my life be the proof of your love. Let my love look like you and what you made.
Psalm 25, as you know, on Wednesday nights we're going over the attributes of God, and we're going to do the mercy of God tonight, but I'm not ready, so we're going to take an excursion here and do a psalm. Psalm 25. Psalm 25 is hard to put in any order, so to speak. It's a lament psalm, it's a wisdom psalm, and it's what's called an acrostic psalm, that meaning that for every Hebrew letter, then there's a new verse that starts, but not all the verses have the proper next alphabetically in the Hebrew. So the psalmist was trying to get our attention as we go through this. So as best we can, we're going to look at the different sections of the psalm. It is a psalm lament, and out of the suffering that he's going through, he gains wisdom, and not just wisdom, but he gains a deeper relationship with God. So if anything, this psalm is about what do we do with suffering? And, you know, obviously books and books have been written about suffering. So you may be going through something rough, or some friend of yours, some loved one may be going through rough times. And so this psalm is a very good psalm for that, right? The psalmist is going through some terrible thing, and he's crying out to God. And he gains wisdom and insight and relationship with God. So let me read the psalm and just make some comments. I think the first three verses sets the setting, that he's going through some real rough times. And then he gains wisdom, or he cries to learn in the midst of suffering. And then he gains wisdom about himself. He gains wisdom about God, and then how God relates to him. Verses 12 and following. He gains wisdom and then relationship with God, verses 16 through 19, and then finally he prays again that the Lord would keep him. But so we come up with the question, how do we respond when we are suffering? How do we deal with the frustrations of life, with the onslaught of quote-unquote bad luck? Things happen to us, and they happen to us, and they happen to us. How do we deal with that? And what this psalm brings up is that there's the uncommon but godly reaction to suffering. And that's what we have here. This is kind of like almost a shock, almost an incredible surprise how the psalmist responds to suffering. But he cries out the first three verses to God. He says, "To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul." Now, in that very thing, I lift up my soul. It's not well, God, I think I'm having a bad day. I'm not feeling too good. No. Here's my soul, God. I'm just in a bad way. You see, it's very intense. And it's to you, O Lord. It's very instructive. To you, because when we're going through some hard times, we usually, unless we cuss, "Oh God," or name Jesus or something, but we don't turn to God many times. We turn to other means to relieving our pain. Anger, alcohol, sex, buying stuff, travel, all kinds of things. But here, the psalmist, in the midst of suffering, he says, "Oh God, to you I lift up my soul. Oh my God, in you I trust." And then one of the things about the Psalms, I call them raw soul. Raw soul. Here's a psalmist, he's going through hard times, and what does he say? He talks about shame, and none of us want to look like dumb, right? We don't want to look dumb. So here the psalmist says, don't let me be ashamed. Don't let me look stupid. Don't let me look dumb. Do not let me be ashamed. Do not let my enemies exult over me. I mean, now he talks about enemies. And the enemies are in the Bible, we have three massive, massive enemies. Satan and all his demons, a great, great enemy. And he is alive and well, and he's out about seeing whom he may devour. He is out to get you and me. That's one great enemy. And then another great enemy is the world. All its values and all its bad philosophies, ungodly, deceptive philosophies, they're out there through the TV, through the radio, through the billboards, through just the way people think, higher education. All of it is against God and his kingdom. And they're great enemies. So Satan, the world, and then our own hearts. We are sinful, and our own hearts deceive us. And our emotions deceive us, and our minds deceive us, and our bodies fail us. And here we go. So we have great enemies, you see. And here the psalmist is saying, do not let my enemies exult over me. I'm trusting in you, God, but if I'm trusting in you and you fail me, I'm going to look dumb. I mean, if we're honest, we're all sometimes think that way. Though we may not want to say it, the psalmist is very honest. Do not let me be ashamed, God. I'm trusting in you. By the way, that's where shame comes from, right? If I trust that this platform is going to hold me, and I'm up here doing my thing, and then I fall, this thing cracks, I'm trusting in this thing, and if it cracks and I fall down, I'm going to be ashamed. I'm going to look stupid. I mean, why did you trust that platform? You shouldn't have. You're sitting in those chairs, and if all of a sudden you go to the ground because it breaks, it's like, I'm going to look stupid. Get up real quick. Because we were trusting in the chair. Or whatever. We trust in idols. We trust in people. And so forth. When they let us down, we feel dumb. And so the psalmist here is saying, do not let me be ashamed, God. I'm trusting in you. I'm lifting my soul to you, God. Do not let my enemies exult over me. Indeed, and there's a confession of trust, a confession of, yes, God, I know. Here's the deal, verse 3. Indeed, none of those who wait for you will be ashamed. I'm making this confession, Lord, that, yeah, you're trustworthy. On the other hand, those who deal treacherously without cause will be ashamed. God, you are just. And I'm making that confession. I'm trusting that you are just and you will bring the judgment that's needed. You know, you will bring it about. So this psalmist, again, is being so honest, so there. But now comes the surprise. It is very, very surprising the way he deals with the suffering. Okay, he's cried out to God, but in the midst of suffering, look at what the psalmist does. In verse 4, make me know your ways, O God. Teach me your path. You know how almost impossible that is? When you and I are hurting, do we say, okay, what am I supposed to learn here? Let me learn. Okay, Lord, teach me. No. When we're hurting so bad, like, oh, God, why? I want out of this pain. I want out of this frustration, God. But here the psalmist says, Lord, teach me. Help me to learn. In the midst of the frustration in this marriage, with my children, with my job, the political injustice, the abuse that I've gone under, maybe even my own heart had deceived me and I have fallen, God, and I'm hurting really bad, but teach me, God, teach me. Wow. That is kind of like uncommon, right? But that's where he goes. Make me know your ways, O Lord. Teach me your path. Lead me in your truth. Help me see clearly, God, because my emotions are all messed up. People are all messed up. I need your truth. Because ultimately that's what's going to get me out of my own mess or the mess I've been put under. It's your truth, God. And teach me. For you are the God of my salvation. For you, I wait all day. God, you're my hope. not my children, not my spouse, not my job, not my health, not my own mind, not my own will, not my own emotions, not my own abilities, resources, brain, whatever. No, God, you, God, you're the God of my salvation. You are my life. And then, with that thought about God, that He's his life, and he starts thinking about himself, he says, oh no. I really don't deserve to get God's help. I mean, this is when we're honest with God. Psalm 51 verse 6 says, behold, you desire truth in the innermost being. And you know, in the innermost being of most human beings, it's not too pretty. There's rage, there's anger, there's shame, there's sin, there's broken, deep wounds. Yeah, love and hate, and it's all there. It's pretty ugly. Behold, you desire truth in the innermost being. But then the second part of the verse says, in the hidden parts, you will make me know wisdom. Where I'm expecting judgment when I go into the innermost being. I expect shame. Actually, that's where you teach me. Wow. So here the psalmist, as he pours himself out, as he opens up to God in the midst of suffering, and he says, teach me. The first thing is like, oh my goodness, do I need help or what? So now he says in verse 6, remember, O Lord, your compassion and your loving kindness. Man, I need that bad. Your compassion, to have pity on me. You see how miserable I am. Whether it's my own fault or somebody else has greatly sinned against me, I'm in a bad, miserable place, and I need your pity. I need your mercy. I need your understanding, God, because I'm a mess. Remember, O Lord, your compassion and your loving kindness, your hesed, your loyal, consistent, trustworthy, reliable goodness to me. That's the word. Your profound and steady love towards me, even when I don't remember you, even when I sin against you, you have the best in mind for me, God. So in my mess, have pity on me, have mercy on me, and don't forget your loyal love towards me, God, because I need your consistent love to me. I'm a mess. For they have been from of old. Your compassion and your loving kindness are eternal, God. Do not remember the sins of my youth. God, I really have no right to talk to you even. I don't deserve any of your goodness, God. Now, when I compare myself to other people, I look pretty good. But when I compare myself to absolute holiness, no. No. Oh, God, do not remember the sins of my youth or my transgressions. According to your loving kindness, remember me. For your goodness' sake, O Lord, meaning because you have this reputation of being good to me. Because you have this reputation of being loving in spite when I am not loving. In fact, when I'm rebelling, you have this reputation of having mercy. So for your goodness' sake, Lord, do this. Don't remember the sins of my youth. Rather, according to your loving kindness, remember me. And then it's interesting that when we go like that, when we ask God for help in the midst of suffering, and we go with all our soul, all our being to Him, you know what happens? Not only do we begin to see ourselves accurately, and we need to see ourselves accurately, because when we do not see ourselves accurately, then we complain and bellyache and demand. Oh, God, if you only knew my spouse. Oh, God, if you only knew my... And here we go, long list. No, when we go to God, we learn about ourselves, but then we also learn about God, you see. We also learn about the character of God. And that's what we need, brothers and sisters. We don't need more technology. We don't need more philosophical understandings of life. What we need to know is the character of God. And in the midst of suffering, as he turns to God, he gains wisdom and understanding of who God is. So he said, good and upright is the Lord. Someone has said that one of the fundamental problems that we have is that we don't believe that God is really good. In fact, that was Satan's initial deception to Adam and Eve. He didn't say it, but he was basically saying through the questions, is God really good? He kept you away from eating this. Is God really good? You see, Satan kind of slides it in there without saying it. But this psalmist, in the midst of suffering, he understands and gets to the point, oh my goodness, good and upright is the Lord. Therefore, he instructs sinners in the way. God is good that even though when we rebel against him, he's so good and upright, he still instructs us in the way we should go. He leads the humble in justice, and he teaches the humble his way. And to be humble, part of that humility is I need help. I am needy. When we're not humble, instead of realizing that we're needy, we are demanding. If you only knew what that whatever did to me. If you only knew the life, my story life, you'd understand why I'm enraged. You see? That's not being humble. But when we're humble, God teaches and he leads us in justice. And he teaches the humble his way. And then he realizes, you know what? God never, ever makes a mistake. I don't know anybody like that. But here in verse 10, all the paths of the Lord are loving kindness and truth to those who keep his covenant and his testimonies. I mean, God never, ever makes a mistake. You see, we need to understand that as well. And we need to know about that. Because many times we make God in our image. And we think that because human beings have failed us, because we see that our neighbors are not just, because we see that our friends, even our best friends, fail us, and because we see that our own hearts are not right, we think God is the same. No. This psalmist, in the midst of pain, and he cries out to God, comes to understand that God never, ever makes a mistake. All the paths of the Lord are loving kindness and truth. But you see, it's those who want to follow God that see this. Those who keep his covenant. Those that want to do what is right. Not just anybody. You see? And when he begins to understand and see God in all that he is merciful and loving and righteous and caring, and he never ever makes a mistake. He's absolutely perfect. Now he comes back to himself and he says, oh my goodness, I'm totally, completely naked. And my nakedness shows how sinful I am, how unworthy I am. God, I deserve hell. So he comes to the point of understanding that, and now he bursts out in verse 11. For your name's sake, O Lord, pardon my iniquity, for it is great. Because he's beginning to see his comparison to God and the absolute righteous, moral being that's eternal, absolutely holy. And he says, I'm not holy, God. Pardon my iniquity because it is great. And until we understand those things, no, we're going to go around haughty and angry and self-righteous and demanding, scratching and clawing in life because we do not know God very well, you see. Now, out of all that, the psalmist now gains wisdom for living. It's not just relationship with God, but he gains wisdom for living in the midst of suffering. Not absent from suffering, not let me wait until I'm out of the suffering and then I'll look. No. Through the suffering, he gains wisdom. And so now we pick it up in verse 12. Who is the man who fears the Lord? He will instruct him in the way he should choose. Who is the man that respects God? Who is the man that bows down to God and says, you are Lord? Who is the person that bows down and says, I'm going to obey you, God, because you are Lord. I'm going to respect you above all else, even myself. That's the fear of the Lord. To say God is so powerful and he's so righteous. I need to respect him with all that I am. Who's the man who fears the Lord? Wisdom for living. And the Lord is going to teach him and guide him. You see, that's wisdom, brothers and sisters. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom, right? But until we get to that point, we're going to do our own thing. He will instruct him in the way he should choose. His soul will abide in prosperity, and his descendants will inherit the land. Now he has a long-range view. It's not just the immediate, I'm suffering right now, and that's all the reality that's ever going to be. No, the psalmist, he lifts up his eyes, and his horizon now stretches now for decades ahead. And he says, God is with me, and eventually I'm going to be where God wants me. He's going to be in prosperity. And even my descendants, those around me, and by the way, descendants don't have to be physiological, biological descendants. It's going to be those that we have talked to about the Lord, those who have committed to the Lord because we've helped them be born again. We've communicated the gospel, right? And so he's realizing, man, I'm a part of something much bigger than my immediate suffering. I'm something much bigger, and I'm a part of that. And brothers and sisters, when we have that perspective, it can change the way we live, you see? Because we get caught up just now in the immediate, my immediate pain and my immediate difficulties. No, God is involved with all of our life. From birth to burial, God is involved, especially with his loved ones. And this psalmist has gained that perspective. You see, his soul will abide in prosperity, and his descendants will inherit the land. And then he gains more wisdom. The secret of the Lord is for those who fear him. He will make them know his covenant. The secret of the Lord. You know, how does the Lord work? Well, when we're not walking with God, we end up with just confusion and frustration. But the more we walk with God, the more we see, oh, I see, Lord. And we see more and more how God works. Not exhaustively, not every time. No, we're not, most of us are not prophets. Most of us are not, all spirit-filled to the point that we know everything. No, but as we walk with God, we will see more and more of how he works. And when we see how he works, we can be at ease. It's going to be okay. I know that things don't seem to be working right now, but I know God. I've seen him work in the past, and it's going to be okay. You see, for those who fear the Lord. The secret of the Lord is how he works is for those who fear him. He will make them know his covenant. Remember when Jesus said, hey, you're no longer slaves. You're friends. And then he says, you know how you can tell? Because I'm telling you what's going to happen. And I'm telling you my heart. And I'm telling you what my Father likes. And what he doesn't like. I'm sharing my soul with you. The insight, how we work together. You see? And by the way, isn't that good friendships? When we share our soul with somebody else, knowing, trusting that they're not going to just rake us over the coals. They're not going to gossip about us. They're going to care for us. Isn't that good friendships? And the psalmist is saying here, man, who those who fear the Lord's going to open up to them. He's going to show them his covenant, how he works. There's going to be a friendship now with God. He realizes, man, my eyes are continually towards the Lord. For he will pluck my feet out of the net. What is he talking about? This is wisdom upon wisdom upon wisdom. What he's talking about is, look, in life, instead of stepping into traps, instead of walking into a minefield, he's going to keep my net out of that garbage. I'm not going to be stumbling over and over and over for year after year, decade after decade. No, when I walk with God, he's going to keep me from being entrapped in garbage. You see? He's gaining wisdom upon wisdom. And remember, this is all in the midst of suffering, in the midst of going through hard times. But he asks God, teach me, and he does. He's going to pluck my feet out from the net. Now, with such insight and with such understanding, and knowing that the Lord is with him and the Lord is not judging him, what happens next? What happens next is now the psalmist totally, completely like hemorrhaging, like he just lets loose. God, this is where I'm at. And once again, are not those the best of relationships? When you can totally, completely open up your soul and know that you're not going to be judged. So now this is what the psalmist gains. A relationship with God that is so wonderful. He completely opens up in verse 16, turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. I have all this understanding of you, God, but the reality is this is where I am. I am lonely and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. Bring me out of my distress. This is where I'm at, God. Look upon my afflictions and my trouble and forgive all my sins. I'm a mess. Man, that we could be honest with somebody like that, right? We're so afraid of one another. We're so afraid of people that we've been married to for decades. We're afraid even of our closest friends to completely open up like that. That's why the psalmist is just so beautiful, so wonderful. That the psalmist, after learning all that, he just completely opens up with God. He says, I'm a mess. Forgive my sins. Look upon my enemies, for they are many, and they hate me with a violent hatred. Now, God, I've poured out my soul. And even with that, I need you. All I can do, God, all I can do is be honest with you. Really, that's all I can do, God. I don't have anything to offer you. I'm just going to seek to be honest, to have integrity. Now in verse 20, guard my soul and deliver me. Do not let me be ashamed, for I take refuge in thee. Do you see that? Again, just absolute honesty. God, don't let me down. I'm putting all my soul in your hands. This is me, God. Guard my soul. I'm totally, completely dependent on you. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on you. All I can do is have integrity before you, God. I want to be honest with you. And then from that, listen to this. From that position, from that good relationship with God, from that good understanding of who he is himself and who God is and the relationship that they have now, listen, now he's able to concentrate on the needs of others. Now he's able to look and say, it's not just about my needs. He says, redeem Israel, O God, out of all his troubles, for he knows. He knows. And so God, help Israel, God. Help Israel. The psalmist has gained understanding about himself. He's gained understanding about God. He's gained wisdom as to how to live life. He's gained a deeper relationship with God. He's gained all these things, and now he's able to reach out to others. Psalm 25.
So let my life